to giving himself a new 5-year term in office. That will make his rule of Uganda 30 good years. The opposition have already started complaining. They say the vote is rigged.
And I'm sure you have been shown, many of you, a sample of the predict ballots which were being carried around by some of Museveni's supporters. Predict in favor of Mr. Museveni. These were found out just outside the polling stations.
Security has been tightened in and around the capital city, Kampala, where majority of the opposition supporters are. There are fears that the opposition would bring people out to protest against the victory of President Yoweri Museveni. And the government is saying it's not taking any chances and will not allow any such demonstrations to take place.
The world's biggest economies have reached a deal on how to track imbalances in the global economy. The issue has been blamed for making the 2008 financial crisis much worse than it might have been. China was initially reluctant but came on board in the end. From the G20 finance ministers meeting in Paris, Jackie Rowland reports.
Putting on a show of unity. The smiles of the family photo can't paper over the divisions within the G20. The world's leading financial powers agree that there are imbalances in the global economy, but it's much harder to agree on how to measure them. The sticking point was China. It didn't want its massive foreign currency reserves to be used as an indicator, but G20 members were able to reach a compromise.
This is a very complicated undertaking, and we need to be very careful to make sure we create a level playing field across countries so that financial activity does not migrate to jurisdictions where standards are weaker or less vigorously enforced.
Ministers have also been focusing on commodity prices and food prices in particular. They want to find ways to protect the poorest countries against big price swings.
We have had a major convergence of views between different countries, developing countries and emerging countries, industrialized countries, to say that we had to go much farther in transparency, in the identification of stocks, in the use of agricultural land to respond to the need of population for food.
The financial crisis of 2008 was a global phenomenon, and ministers recognise that they'll need to take a global approach if another meltdown is to be avoided. The French hosts of this meeting have warned countries that they'll need to put self-interest to one side if the whole of the G20 is to achieve strong, sustainable growth. The long haggling over indicators raises a bigger question. If the members of the G20 found it so hard to agree on how to measure global imbalances, will they ever reach agreement on how to tackle those problems? Jackie Rowland, AlJazeera, Paris.
Unions and leaders in Colombia have reached an agreement ending a 2-week-long transport strike. The government has agreed to cancel plans to cut the amount truck drivers are paid for hauling cargo. Thousands of drivers and their families had been blocking roads in the capital, Bogota, crippling parts of the city. 2 German journalists have been released from prison in Iran after being charged with spying. Markus Hellwig and Jens Kohl were sentenced to 20 months in prison for interviewing the son and lawyer of a woman condemned to die by stoning. But Iran's Revolution Court dismissed the sentences, instead slapping each with a $50,000 fine. Germany's ruling CDU party is expected to suffer heavy defeats in a series of regional elections that begin on Sunday that could further shake the stability of German Chancellor Angela Merkel's coalition as its popularity continues to slide. Nick Spicer reports from the port city of Hamburg.
Shipping gets a vote of sorts in Hamburg politics. It is Europe's 3rd biggest port. And the mayor wants to dredge the river so that more vessels can come and use it. But that's not going to save Christoph Ahlhaus. The man from Angela Merkel's Christian Democrats is poised to lose, some 20 points behind the Social Democrats candidate. He sounds in denial.
So you're still hopeful? Even
sure.
Though, yeah.
We do not only hope, we will fight.
Voters in Hamburg are starting off what will be a whole season of regional elections in Germany. There will be at least 7 out of 16 regions, and they threaten to give Angela Merkel's governing coalition a very rocky ride, and especially for the junior partner in that coalition, the Free Democrats.
Leave the shop open, they chant, young members of the local Free Democrats. The shop has to close at 4 on Saturdays, and these defenders of the free market don't like that. Their party scored well and played a kingmaker role in the last general election, joining Angela Merkel in her coalition government. Some 2 years on, there's a problem. Experts say giant deficit spending saved the German economy, so few people are now buying the Free Democrats' mantra of tax cuts.
They said if we lower the taxes, we will have a revival of our economy. We have not lowered our taxes, and we had nevertheless a revival of our economy.
Hamburg's politics are like those of the other regions voting this year, largely local. But if the Free Democrats keep losing ground, Chancellor Merkel may need to start looking for a new national coalition partner. Nick Spicer, AlJazeera, Hamburg.
In China, some local police have been setting a good example. They pitched in to give emergency medical aid to 3 dolphins in Shandong province. The officers helped administer fluids after the dolphins fell sick. The mammals each weigh up to 300 kilograms. Vets say if things go well, the dolphins will be fit enough to go back to performing in just a few days. This is Al Jazeera, and these are the stories making the headlines. Anti-government protests in Libya are widening. Witnesses are talking about a massacre by security forces in the city of Benghazi. A doctor there has told Al Jazeera she's seen over 50 dead in the hospital she works in, amongst them an 8-year-old boy who died from a gunshot wound to the head. And in the city of Baida, east of Benghazi, foreign mercenaries have been seen on the streets. Witnesses have told us that they're shooting live ammunition at demonstrators.
It is a massacre in the full sense of the word. All kinds of weapons are being used against the civilian population. They are firing at people indiscriminately, using civilian cars without license plates to roam the streets and shoot at the people. There are dozens, maybe even hundreds of people who have been killed today. Yesterday, I was at the Jala hospital to look at the dead bodies and found that most of those killed were shot to the head, and chest, and in the eyes. It feels like an open war zone between protesters and the security forces. And there are mercenaries wearing yellow construction helmets who are attacking people from inside their homes.
Opposition groups in Bahrain are expected to set out their demands for the Crown Prince. Thousands of anti-government protesters have gathered once again at Pearl Roundabout. It's become the centre of anti-regime protests and was the scene last week of 2 separate attacks by security forces. Riot police have clashed with anti-government protesters in Algeria's capital. Officers broke up a rally after thousands gathered in the centre of the city.